Your ancestors ate everything they could find, everything. No portion control, no calorie counting, no stopping when full. They gorged, they feasted until they could not move. They ate organs, fat, marrow, skin, the parts you throw away. They consumed more calories in a single successful hunt than you eat in 3 days. And they were not fat. Not because they were different from you, not because they had better genetics, or more discipline, or some ancestral secret your doctor has not told you about. They were not fat because the world they lived in made fatness almost impossible, and the world you live in makes staying lean almost impossible. Same brain, same body, completely different outcome. Here is what changed, and it is not what you think. Start with the most basic misunderstanding about your own metabolism. You have been told, in various ways, your whole life, that weight comes down to calories in versus calories out. Eat less, move more. Simple math. Personal responsibility. That model is not wrong, but it is so incomplete that it might as well be wrong. Because the real question is not how many calories you consume. It is what your brain does with the signal that food is available. And your brain, the brain your ancestors built over 300,000 years of evolution, was never designed for the world you currently live in. It was designed for scarcity. And you live in permanent abundance. Researcher Herman Pontzer at Duke University has spent years studying the metabolism of the Hadza, one of the last remaining hunter-gatherer populations on Earth, living in Tanzania in a way that closely resembles how your ancestors lived for most of human history. His findings overturned one of the most widely held assumptions in metabolic science. The Hadza do not burn significantly more calories per day than sedentary office workers in the United States. Despite walking enormous distances, despite the physical demands of their lifestyle, their total daily energy expenditure, when adjusted for body size, is roughly the same as yours. This is not a small finding. It demolishes the simple story that your ancestors were lean because they moved more. They were lean for a different reason entirely. The reason is a system your body still runs, a system that worked perfectly for 300,000 years and has been catastrophically disrupted in the last 100. Your body has a feast-famine architecture. It was built for a world where food came in unpredictable bursts. A successful hunt followed by days of lean foraging. A season of abundant fruit followed by weeks of almost nothing. In this world, your metabolism is not a fixed engine running at a constant rate. It is a dynamic system that ramps up during abundance and down during scarcity, that stores aggressively when food arrives because it has learned, across hundreds of thousands of years, that food will not always arrive. Your fat cells are not a failure. They are an extraordinarily successful adaptation to a world that no longer exists. And here is where the dopamine story begins. Because the feast-famine cycle was not just a metabolic pattern, it was a neurological one. When your ancestors ate, really ate, after days of effort, after a hunt that cost enormous physical and social resources, their dopamine system fired in a way that yours almost never does. The reward was proportional to the effort and the weight. The feast felt extraordinary because the famine that preceded it was real. The brain's reward circuitry was calibrated to a world where pleasure was earned through scarcity, and where the memory of that pleasure motivated the enormous effort required to obtain food again. Kent Berridge at the University of Michigan has spent decades distinguishing between what he calls wanting and liking in the brain's reward system. Wanting is the dopamine-driven anticipation, the craving, the motivation to pursue. Liking is the actual pleasure of consumption. These are separate systems, and in a feast-famine world, they were perfectly synchronized. The wanting built across days of hunger. The liking peaked at the moment of consumption. The signal was clean, powerful, and self-limiting, because after a true feast, the body and the brain both needed rest. Your food environment has hacked both systems simultaneously. Processed food, engineered by teams of scientists whose explicit job is to maximize palatability, delivers a dopamine signal that your ancestors' brains never encountered. The combination of refined sugar, industrial fat, and salt hits your reward circuitry in a way that no naturally occurring food does. It generates wanting without genuine hunger. It generates liking without genuine satisfaction. It keeps both systems firing simultaneously and indefinitely, in a way that the feast-famine architecture was never built to handle. You are not weak. You are not undisciplined. You are running 300,000-year-old software in an environment it was never designed to navigate. So let us reconstruct a specific moment. You are in a late Paleolithic camp somewhere in what is now Europe, approximately 25,000 years ago. Your group has been moving for 3 days. The foraging has been thin, roots, some berries, small game that barely fed the children. Everyone is genuinely hungry, not the mild discomfort you feel before lunch. Real hunger, the kind that sharpens attention, that makes the entire sensory system orient toward finding food. And then someone brings down an aurochs, a wild ancestor of the modern cow, weighing close to 1,000 kilograms. What happens next is what your body was built for. The group eats. Massively. Deliberately. The liver first. The most nutrient-dense organ. Eaten raw and still warm. Then the fat deposits around the kidneys. Rendered and consumed in quantities that would alarm a modern cardiologist. Then the muscle meat, roasted over fire. The marrow cracked from the bones. The brain consumed. Nothing wasted. The dopamine response is enormous. The satisfaction is complete. And then, because this is how the system was designed, the wanting stops. The body is fed. The brain is satisfied. The feast ends not because of discipline or portion control, but because the signal reaches its natural conclusion. 3 days later, the hunger begins to build again, and the cycle continues. Now compare that to your Tuesday afternoon. You are not genuinely hungry. You ate 2 hours ago, but there is something on your desk, or in your kitchen, or in the vending machine down the hall, and your wanting system, your dopamine circuitry, has been quietly activated by the sight of it, or the smell of it, or simply by the habit of reaching for something at this hour. The food is available without effort. The reward arrives without scarcity. And because the engineered palatability of what you are eating was designed to prevent the satiety signal from firing cleanly, the wanting does not stop when the liking peaks. You are not experiencing a feast. You are experiencing a dopamine loop with no natural exit. Anthropologist Marshall Sahlins made a famous argument in the 1960s that hunter-gatherers were the original affluent society, not because they had everything, but because they wanted little beyond what the environment reliably provided. Their needs, including their food needs, were calibrated to a world of real scarcity and real feast. They were not fighting their cravings. Their cravings were working exactly as designed. The obesity epidemic is not a failure of individual willpower. It is a collision between a 300,000-year-old metabolic and neurological system and a food environment that has existed for less than 100 years. Your ancestors ate more than you, in a single sitting, after a successful hunt, than you eat in days. And they were not fat because the system that governed their relationship with food was intact. The scarcity was real. The effort was real. The feast was earned. And the dopamine response was proportional, self-limiting, and followed by the famine that reset everything. You have the feast. Every day. Without the famine. Without the effort. Without the reset. And your 300,000-year-old brain does not know what to do with that. It is still waiting for the hunt to end. It is still storing for the famine that is not coming. It is still firing the wanting signal because the liking signal never reaches its natural conclusion. Your ancestors never gained weight because they never lived in your world. They had no choice but to be lean. The environment enforced it. You have every choice and an environment that fights every one of them. Same brain, same body. The world changed, and your metabolism is still trying to catch up.